Welcome to the Storytelling That Sticks for Business and Life podcast. I'm your keynote, TED Talk and story coach, Doug Stevenson. In this podcast series, I'm going to share with you some simple and practical storytelling techniques and hacks that will make you stand out from the competition so that you can get paid to speak, or to give a TED Talk that goes viral, or to simply tell your story in a way that makes a difference in the world. You'll learn how to choose, craft, and deliver stories that stick. Personal stories from your amazing life, business stories, leadership and sales stories, stories that are marketable and memorable, stories that sell you and your product or service. My job as your virtual keynote and story coach is to help you design and deliver stories and speeches that get people to do what you want them to do, or to consider a new perspective. If you're serious about using storytelling to advance your career, to get paid to speak, or simply to get your message across in a more engaging and compelling manner, this podcast is for you. All right, well, let's get started. Hello, Adiba.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I am good.
Good. Well, I'm glad to see you again and to catch up with you since we met a long time ago. It was January of 2017.
Yeah, 6 years ago, almost to the day. Oh, seven to the day.
Yeah. It's a long time. And so today, I don't know if you are aware that I've been doing this podcast called Storytelling That Sticks for Business and Life. And one of the subjects that people are interested in are TED Talks. And how do you do a TED Talks? How do you apply for a TED Talks? What is it like?
Okay.
What will my experience be? Will I get anything out of it? Will it change my life? Will it impact me personally? So my question to you is, first, when you were considering applying for a TED Talk here at TEDx Tucson, what was your process of developing your idea worth spreading?
So for me, it was what had helped me move forward in life when I found myself at what would be considered for some people a breaking point. What things that I had either grown up with or mantras that I created for myself or philosophies that had kind of been instilled in me as I grew helped me get through those points. And there were some really dark and low points in there. So I thought if they could help me, maybe they could help someone else. Maybe this is a philosophy that other people could use and ascribe to in helping them move through the ruts in their life and really kind of claim their life for their own instead of just accepting whatever the world wanted to put on them.
Very, very nice. Very nice. Because it comes out of a desire to help, to be of service. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that my mom always told me when I was growing up, we were pretty poor, but she always said, if you have, give, if you can, do. And I had this philosophy and these experiences, and somehow I came out on the other side pretty okay. And so I figured this is my opportunity to give. I have, so give.
Now, how did you see TED, giving a TED Talk, as a way to spread that message?
I didn't really have a platform per se at the time, right? I was a children's book author, but I was mostly only known here in Tucson. There were some other places that had picked up my book here and there, but they didn't know like me, the person. They didn't know Adiba. They didn't know, and even a lot of Tucson didn't know Adiba, the person, and what I had experienced in life that gave me the audacity to believe that I could publish my own children's book and do so successfully, right? And so I kind of looked at it like I knew that TED was a very large platform that had the potential to be seen by people all over the world. And I'm not naive enough to think that I'm a unicorn and I'm the only one who has horrible experiences in life and overcomes, right? And
Right.
so I thought, this would be a great vehicle to be able to just kind of share philosophy, share some wisdom to not just my local community, but hopefully the global community. When I was 13, I had this wild idea that I was going to change the world when I grew up. My friend asked me, "What do you want to do when you get older?" I was like, "I'm going to change the world." And he's like, "How?" I was like, "I don't know, but I'm going to do it." And I thought, well, maybe this is step one of just getting my voice out into the world.
Now, but before doing that talk, because I was just watching the video on YouTube, and you seemed incredibly poised and comfortable on that stage in front of 500 people. Big stage, big theater, big audience, important venue, important moment in time.
Mhm.
But in watching you, I'm thinking she's really experienced. She's really poised up there. Had you done much speaking before? Because a lot of people who want to give TED Talks, they're not speakers. They don't come from a speaking background, but yet they have a message.
Public speaking in that regard, no. But I had grown up on stages like dancing. I was a dancer from age 10 to 21.
Mm-hmm.
So being on stage wasn't scary for me. And then in my early 20s, I was very much involved in the open mic and slam poetry scene and
Uh,
spoken word poetry scene. So I had done a lot of like speaking in front of small crowds for open mics and poetry slams. But being on a stage is just something that just feels like very natural and comfortable for me. I'm probably more comfortable there than like one-on-one with a person.
that's an odd thing for a lot of us. It's like I'm happier in front of an audience than I am in a luncheon or a networking situation.
Oh, very much so. Very much. Put me on a stage with some lights and I'm good to go. Get me in the room where I have to go and like introduce myself to people. I'm a wallflower.
Now, your TED Talk title was "Skating Downhill: The Art of Claiming Your Life." Tell me about that.
So skating downhill, I don't know if you've ever seen roller skates, but there's a stopper. It's about this big. But if you're going downhill, that stopper is not going to do much for you. And so it's this idea of just like flying face first into the life that you want without stopping. And if you try to stop, you'll likely fall. But I think that's a good thing because you don't want to stop when you're going after your dreams, right? You just want to go face first into it. But if you do fall, what do you do after that? Right? Do you just say, "Oh, dang it, I fell. I guess I can't continue." Or do you get up and you say, "But I'm on a mission. I have this goal. I've got to get to the bottom of that hill. I've got to get to this dream that I have. So I'm going to keep going." And at the end of the TED Talk, I give this analogy of like trees that fall down in your path when you're skating downhill. And you have the opportunity at that moment when you find that tree in your path of what am I going to do? Am I going to step over it? Am I going to turn around and go back? Am I going to go around it? How am I going to get to the next point? Or am I just going to abandon it? So, yes, skating downhill, the art of claiming your life.
Now, has this TED Talk helped you in redefining and solidifying that in your own life? Because obviously, you're someone who has overcome a lot of adversity,
Mhm.
overcome a lot of adversity, but you also have big dreams and big aspirations to be of service in the world, to make a difference in the world. And
Mhm.
so a TED Talk is quite often an opportunity to experience yourself at another level and to propel yourself forward, or at least personally, to give you that self-confidence walking off that stage to go, "Oh my gosh, I did that. That was awesome. That was amazing. I now believe in myself even more, and it can propel me forward even more powerfully." How did that moment of actually doing the TED Talk affect your life going forward since then?
So, I will tell you something that no one knows, Doug. And unless you were backstage, you wouldn't have known it. As soon as I got off the stage and they started unmiking me, I literally doubled over in tears. And I had to run to the bathroom, which was like catty corner from the side of the stage. And I locked myself in there and I literally did like a wall slide and I sobbed for like 7 minutes because yes, I had done that, but it had never been more clear to me in that moment that this is what I'm supposed to be doing in life. I felt like at that moment I had fully stepped into my purpose. I knew that part of my purpose was definitely writing and spreading the message of inclusion and advocacy for the disabled community. I didn't know how much speaking would be a part of it. And that moment and getting the reaction from the crowd, I don't know, it was just like a floodlight of this is it. This is that piece of the puzzle that you were missing to take you where you need to be. And I will tell you, since that TED Talk, my children's book that had sold a few, like maybe like 2,000 copies by that point, has gone on to sell over 7,000 copies now. It was part of what helped me get my book deal for my memoir. It opened up the door for speaking engagements across the country. I've had countless people who have watched it message me and tell me how impactful and pivotal that message was for them, how much they needed it, how much it changed their life, how they didn't think about things in that perspective, but it kind of opened their eyes. I started my LLC, I started my own company. My memoir is being adapted to television. It's really, it opened up the floodgates, but I think it didn't open up the floodgates of business. It opened up the floodgates for me of possibility,
Mm, I agree.
of what I can do, what I can accomplish. And it was because that floodlight came on of like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. Okay, okay. And then it just kind of like kept going from there.
What I intuited from what you just said is this concept of stepping out of the shadows and into the light of your own power.
Yeah, yes, yes. And it was also the very first time I ever told my story, a big part of my story, publicly. I had friends who never knew that I was so poor growing up. I had friends who never knew that I almost gave my daughter up for adoption when she was 2 years old. There's a lot of vulnerability involved in telling the ugly parts of your story, right? But it also gave me the strength, like to step into that light, to step into that power and continue telling my story.
Well, what I'm also hearing that a critical part of most people who do a TED Talk is telling their story.
Mhm.
So in the auditioning process, you came to us in the audition with a story,
Mhm.
and then you were chosen. And then we started to work on it. I became your coach and we started to work on it. And how did it evolve from that initial concept you had when you're sitting there in your kitchen all by yourself during that period of time between audition, acceptance, and stepping on stage? How did it change? How did it evolve? How did it mature? Did you gain more courage? What happened?
I think when I auditioned, it had the shape of a story, right? And there were a lot of different roads in the shape of that story. And from what I've been told, everyone that was judging my audition had a different takeaway. Everybody went down a different road of what they thought my message was. But in the end, everybody was like, well, we all think she said something different, but we all needed to hear what she said. And I think in the end, I mean, I was not chosen, then I was an alternate, and then somehow I ended up becoming official. Once I became official and we started working together, you kind of helped me narrow it down to one road. And what is the road that I want to take people down in order to get the fullness of my story, but make sure that everyone gets the same message.
So it becomes more focused instead of just going off and telling stories and not knowing exactly what do I want them to take away. It became more focused. I help you to focus on, well, what is the outcome that you want them to take away that will benefit them in their life?
I think I knew what I wanted them to take away when I initially auditioned. this is the takeaway, and this down this road, it's the same takeaway, but this is another story that gives you the same takeaway. And this is another story that gives you the same takeaway. And I just needed one focused story to give that takeaway. It all had the same takeaway. There were just a lot of different branches to it.
So, in the process of stepping up there on the day of, let's talk about the day of. A
Uh-huh.
lot of people have this vision of, I want to apply and I hope I get accepted, but they don't really understand what kind of pressure you're going to be under on the day of, what kind of nerves you're going to deal with, what kind of clothes you need to wear, how do you prepare, how do you get yourself ready. But then all of a sudden, there you are.
Yeah.
It's the day of,
Mhm.
and you arrive at the venue, whatever that is.
Uh-huh.
And now it's go time. You've got it. You're going to be one of 12 speakers.
Mhm.
And you're going to have to be able to manage your energy and manage yourself. And then you're going to have to just, when they say, please welcome Adiba Nelson, it's like, oh my God, here we
Yes.
go. This is the moment.
Uh-huh.
Thinking about
Uh-huh.
this for months and months and months, but it's here. It's like walk
Yeah.
out and do it. Step on that red dot. So talk
Yeah.
about the day of.
The day of, I was nauseous with nerves. I had anxiety gut like nobody's business. I was terrified, which is weird because I grew up on stages, so I should not have been nervous. But I grew up dancing and doing poetry, which is very easy for me. I've never like told my business to an entire crowd of people. And I don't know if people, well, I don't think people realized it, but as I was speaking, like they introduce you and you walk out onto the dot and you have your clicker and you're talking, your mic's up and you're ready to go. And as I was talking, somehow a slide got skipped. It never made it into their slide deck up in the AV room. So I'm talking and I go to click to the next slide and it's not the slide it's supposed to be. And I was like, oh my crap. But I can't, I know from dancing, you can't let the audience know that you've messed up because they don't know what's wrong and what's right, right? They just know that you're up there. And so I had to figure out how do I keep telling the story and don't lose my place of where I was going and what was I saying and hope that the next slide is the right slide too. That was very nerve-wracking in the moment. And if you watch the video, you'll see there's a pause. I kind of pause for a little bit. And in my head, I'm thinking, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Wait, what's my next line? Oh, wait, is the next slide right? And you just keep pushing through it. I was terrified though. I was definitely terrified. I was just praying that as I kept clicking through slides, it was going to be the right slide. It was going to be the right slide. It was going to be the right slide.
Well, then let's go back and step back to before getting ready, getting prepared. Did you rehearse a lot? Did you practice a lot? Because one of the things that I coach people to do is you script it and you practice it out loud so many times that when you're on stage and you're in front of that audience, you start hearing your rehearsals coming out of your mouth. You
Yes.
start hearing your
So
preparation. It's like, oh, I remember the next line because I did it 40
you
times.
you did drill us a lot on know your story, know your story, know your story, know your story. And I remember we did one coaching session at your house and I thought I had my story and you're like, that's not your story. Go and figure out your story. That's not it. And I felt like, well, who is this man thinking he can tell me he knows what my story is and that's not my story? Yeah, this is my story. I wrote it. And then I realized, nope, that's not my story. That's not it either. So once I figured it out and I ran it by you and you're like, that's your story. Then we had one final rehearsal where we had to rehearse it with no script. I had to have it just in my head. And I was terrified. And I remember practicing it outside. We're at the library. And I was practicing it outside on like this little balcony patio thing that they have. And I just kept going over it and over it. And I was like, I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's good. And someone else that was there that was also rehearsing that day, they're like, no, it's a great story. And I was like, I don't know if Doug's gonna like it. What if he says it's still not the story? We go out there tomorrow. Like, what am I gonna do? And when I came in to go up next to do my story, I think I was talking very quickly. And I remember you telling me, slow down, like measure your breath. Because I know when I get nervous and I have to speak, like I lose all my breath. And I'm blah, 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 blah. Um,
I remember that feeling.
yeah.
I
And
know
so
that feeling.
I had to really just kind of recenter myself, breathe a little bit, and then go into it. But even the rehearsal was just nerve-wracking because you don't know how people are going to respond. I just know that as a writer or as a performer, my job is to make you feel and to make you think. And so I can only hope that what I've written and what I'm sharing with the crowd does that. But it's scary because you don't know. And I was terrified.
Well, you're not alone in being someone who steps into a TED Talk experience not having done a lot of speaking, but having been comfortable with themselves in different venues and different areas, like did slam poetry and dancing and things. But that's not the same as stepping out onto that dot at that moment and having to do that precise 10 minutes or whatever
It's
it is. Because
13.
even for me, who's been speaking professionally forever, when I did my TED Talk in San Antonio, it was nerve-wracking because it's not like anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Being the sixth person out of 12 or whatever, it's nerve-wracking. It's very weird. It's very strange. And
Yes.
yet, if you have done the work prior to really clarify what is my message and why am I doing this? I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for them. I'm doing this to be of service and to clarify that message, rehearse the heck out of it. I think that at that moment, it basically saves your ass.
It did. It did save my behind because when that slide messed up, because I had gone over it so many times and you drilled into us, know your story, know your story, know your story. I was able to keep going and know I had to tweak it a little bit because of the slide mess up, but I was able to just keep it moving pretty smoothly, like no one figured it out. And I was the next to last person to go.
Which
So I
can
had
be
to
nerve
listen.
wracking.
Yeah, I had to listen to everyone's story before me. And then Steven followed up and he tore the house down. But yeah, it was having to listen to everyone. And what's scarier is not necessarily listening to everyone's story as they go before you. It's hearing the crowd response to
Mm.
a story that goes before you.
Yeah, there's a lot of psychology in this, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's
Absolutely.
it's not just a technical thing of I've written it, I've memorized it, I'm going to go tell it. There's all this self-belief and self-doubt that sneaks in this sense of, even if you think you're really confident in yourself in a lot of venues, getting up in front of an audience can bring out every insecurity that you've ever had, didn't know you had.
Yeah, I think it was the first time I ever experienced imposter syndrome.
Oh,
Like I didn't know what it was, and that brought it out. And it's been my best friend ever since.
well, at the same time, though, what I'm hearing is if that imposter syndrome showed up, it kind of got healed a little bit by the time you got done and walked off and heard those applause. And it's never going to be the same as it was. It's never going to have that power over you in the
Right.
same way, is it?
Right. It was the tree that fell down in the path.
Very nice.
It was the tree that fell down in the path, and I had to decide, am I gonna let this imposter syndrome stop me? Am I gonna like not do the TED Talk now? Or am I just gonna step over it and be like, I see you there, but I still gotta go do this thing?
I think for many people, they hear this and they relate so well to you because they are hearing you and thinking, well, that's me. I'm scared too. I want to do this. I really want to do this. This is a big thing for me in my life that I do a TED Talk. And yet I'm scared too. And I'm worried that who am I and why would anybody want to hear from me? But who are you not?
Who are you
Who
not?
else?
Right.
Everybody that steps onto that stage, they're not all some famous Oprah Winfrey person. I
No.
mean, yeah, you watch some TED Talks and it's like, oh my God, that TED Talk, it's got 100 million views. And it was like some famous Bill Gates person. It's like, well, who am I? Well, you're
Right.
you. And you've got a
Right.
story to tell. And that's the
Right.
beauty of this is you have a story to tell. Nobody else has your story. Everybody can relate to your story in their own way. And
Hmm.
so it's your job to share it,
Hmm.
to get out of your own way and share it so that they can benefit and they can learn. But in the process, you benefit,
Hmm.
you
I
learn.
absolutely did. I absolutely did. I mean, shortly after, so that was January 2017. In February 2018, I had a documentary done about my daughter and I. And in September of that year, I think it was, it went on to win an Emmy.
Wow. Tell me a little bit more about that documentary, and tell me a little bit about the story of you and your daughter.
So my daughter's disabled, and we got her diagnosis when she was 10 months old. And then when she was about a year and a half, I made the conscious decision to become a single parent. We moved out here to Arizona, and I've been raising her on my own. And then I got married and I got divorced. But I was married at the time of the documentary. And the documentary is just about me raising my daughter, how I move through life. I'm also a retired, semi-retired burlesque performer, and how that impacts my parenting. Why? What does burlesque have to do with my parenting? Everything. Because my daughter is in a disabled body, right? Her body looks different than everybody else's. She's got one leg shorter than the other. She's got one arm that doesn't work. She's in a body that the world will continuously tell her is wrong and it's not beautiful and it's not okay. And in burlesque, you have to be really vulnerable. I mean, you're taking your clothes off in front of a bunch of people that you don't know. And I live in a body that is traditionally not beautiful by American standards, right? I'm Black, I'm fat, I have a gap in my teeth, I have natural hair. By American beauty standards, I don't fit the norm of what is considered beautiful. But I felt like if I'm going to tell my daughter with absolute truth that she is beautiful just as she is, I need to like walk that and own that for myself. And for me, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, with my dance background, how else do I own that other than like just there's my body. This is what I look like, and y'all gonna love it. And they do love it. I always get a standing ovation. I always get, people tear the house down. But that had a big part of my self-love journey was through burlesque. And how do I teach my daughter to love herself if I can't fully love myself, right? So it was this whole story about like just my life as her mother, as disability rights advocate, as a speaker, as a burlesque performer, and how it all ties together to be this kid's mom. And it's called The Full Nelson, and it went on to win an Emmy as an outstanding documentary. And I don't think that would have happened had the folks at AZPM PBS not known about this TED talk that was out there where I talk about, raising my daughter with disabilities and, almost having to give her up for adoption because we were struggling so much. And then as they started to peel back the layers of like, who is Adiba? Like, tell us more. They were like, oh, there's a story here. There's something here. Let's do something. And that's how it came to be. That documentary that won the Emmy then was sent out with some media packages when I was trying to put my children's book off to a traditional publisher because I was like, I don't want to self-publish anymore. This is hard. It's a lot of money. I don't want it. Publishers still were like, we're not going to touch the children's book, but we've seen this documentary. We've seen the TED Talk. We think this woman should write a memoir. See if she'll do that. We'd be interested in that.
Aha.
And so my agent was like, hey, you want to do this thing? I was like, sure, why not? I'll try it. Wrote the memoir. Took a long time for it to get a book deal, but in the process of getting the book deal, I got a TV deal
Wow.
because they'd seen the proposal for the memoir, they watched the documentary, they saw the TED Talk. There's a story here. We think the rest of America can relate to this woman. This is a story that we haven't seen. We haven't seen the authentic real life story of a Black single mom raising a disabled child in this country. We don't know what that looks like. All of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, the oh my God, the everything. And so there's always a story. And I think TED opened that door.
Wow. What I'm hearing is that the TED Talk was part of an expansive opportunity for you to discover all of these different opportunities, some of which you reached out for and some of which came back in a different form, but it had legs. It went in all
Yeah.
kinds. I don't think you started out when you had the idea to tell your story thinking, well, I'm going to do a documentary and I'm going to win an Emmy and I'm going to get a publisher that's going to publish a memoir and they're going to ask me to write a memoir because, like, the imposter syndrome says, well, who am I? And everybody has this same question
Who am
coming
I?
forward. And I think this is very encouraging for a lot of people who want to give a TED talk is I have a story to tell too. So is TED the opportunity for me to try and tell that?
And it absolutely could be. Now, Ted was a big part of it. I also worked really hard. I think I manifested a lot of things that have come to pass. But Ted was, like I said, that floodlight of like, oh, maybe I can do some things. Maybe, maybe this is part of that purpose. And I think once you step into that floodlight of accepting, like, this is where I'm supposed to be, I feel like that's when the universe is like, oh, so that's what we're doing. Bet, let's get in line.
I equate it to experiences that I've had where I wanted to do something, but I was hesitant because I thought, well, I've never done this before and I don't know how to do it. And I'm going to look like an idiot or it's going to be painful or hard. And there's always a part of me that says, just get to the starting line. Just start. Just
Yeah,
get to the starting line, put in a proposal
yeah,
or whatever. Just start somewhere and then see what happens. Because a lot of people live in the fear of, well, I don't know all of the steps. I want to have all of the steps laid out so that I know what all the steps are going to be. That's not the way that this works. You take the first step and the
yeah,
second step reveals itself. So
yeah.
as we kind of conclude this little conversation, which has been fabulous, I so appreciate you sharing all of this with us because I think it's very encouraging to people. What would you say to someone listening to this who's thinking about submitting an idea, their idea worth spreading, to a TED committee somewhere in the world?
Baby, do it scared. Do it scared. Whatever it is that you want to do. TED Talk, write a book, take a dance class, do it all. Do it scared. What is the worst thing that could happen? You don't get picked for a TED Talk. Okay, but you did it and you didn't die. You didn't die. So just do it. Like, if people love it, they love it. If they hate it, they hate it. But you know that you did it. And then you know that you can do it again. You can go back and tighten it up, do whatever it is you need to do, and try again. But do it scared. There are so many things that I have to do scared all the time. Parenting, do it scared. Like, being in a relationship, do it scared. But you don't, I mean, at the risk of sounding cliche, you don't know unless you try it. And in my house, we have a rule. You're not allowed to not try. You're not allowed to not try.
I
So
love that.
we're just gonna figure it out. And if we stumble, we stumble. And to your point about, you have to know, people think they have to know all the steps and da 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 da. No, because what if you think you know step one, step two, step three, but there's step 1A that you didn't account for?
Yeah.
Then what do you do,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So just take that first step, see what happens, trust your gut to make the next step, see what happens, and just keep going.
And if one TED organization doesn't choose you, you can apply to another one. And you can apply to another one, or you can apply a year or two later because the people on the committee when you got rejected are not the same people 2 years from now. So you could
Right?
reapply again. I love this concept of, yeah, do it scared.
To do it. I mean, actors don't go on just one audition and be like, oh, well, I didn't get it. I guess I'm never going to be an actor now. Like, that's just not how things work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The fear of failure and the fear of rejection and all that kind of stuff. You just have to accept that. Okay, it's that's just part of the deal. So do it scared.
And when I think about failure, I think like you fail up. You don't fail. You fail up because if you didn't get it that time, it just means that there's something else better out there for you.
Yeah.
So I didn't fail. I failed up. Like I didn't get chosen initially, but somehow I ended up on that stage.
That's
So
right. You said you were an alternate, and then somehow something shifted, something else changed, and then you got in.
yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe the universe was like, oh, well, she took a baby step. We'll give her a pass. I don't know.
Well, I also have come to realize from my life, looking back at all the experiences of my life, is like there are no mistakes along the way. We feel like there's mistakes and failures along the way. They're all stepping stones to your greatest self and
Mm-hmm.
to stepping into your most authentic power. And
Mm-hmm.
what I'm hearing from you today, and what I think we're all hearing from you today, is that you have had the courage throughout your entire life to keep stepping into the next level of power, the next level of self-acceptance, the next level of self-awareness along the way as well. And you're sharing that journey with us. And that's all we can expect. We're just going to share our journey,
Yeah.
and somebody's going to get it, and somebody's going to be changed. And thank God for that.
Thank God for it, because we all need it. Everybody needs to hear something that someone else says. So,
Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. I think a lot of people will be encouraged to think, well, if she can do it with all of her fear and all of her trepidation and all of her nausea and all of her self-doubt, if she can do it and walk away and have this kind of empowering experience, well, why shouldn't I give it a shot? So, Adiba Nelson, thank you so much for your courage and for sharing your wisdom today.
thank you so much for having me, Doug. I appreciate it.
All right, well, that's it for this episode. If you feel that you learned something valuable today, something that you can use that will make your story stick, stories that make you and your business memorable, marketable, and monetizable, there are 3 things I'd like you to do. First, click on the follow or subscribe button and leave a review wherever you listen. And second, share this podcast with your friends and coworkers, your email list, and on social media. And third, connect with me on LinkedIn. And when you're ready to get serious about taking your stories to the next level, or if you have an important speech, presentation, or TED Talk coming up, or if you want some guidance on how to make the transition to becoming a professional speaker, let's schedule your free 30-minute coaching session where we can get to know each other and see if we're a good fit. And as always, I'd love to hear from you with your questions and comments. Let me know that you're out there listening and learning. You can send an email with your questions, comments, and suggestions to Deborah@DougStevenson.com. That's Deborah, DEBORAH, @DougStevenson.com. Hey, thanks for listening. Until the next episode, I'm Doug Stevenson.